Adding polynomials. In order to add polynomials, we must add like terms. Here we have an example of like terms, 5x squared and 3x squared. And we know that they're like terms because they have the same variable raised to the same exponent. They both have the variable x and the exponent of 2. So when we add them together, we end up with x squared. We combine the two coefficients, 5 and 3, to get 8, and then we bring down the part of the term that's the same, the x squared. So here's our first example of adding polynomials. This time we're going to use the horizontal method. With the horizontal method, we keep the polynomials written horizontally, side by side. So we simply try to identify the like terms between each polynomial. Okay. So from the first polynomial, we can see that it's in the first set of parentheses. There's a 7x squared. There's also an x squared term in the second polynomial, in the second set of parentheses. So we can combine those like terms together, 7x squared plus 2x squared, to get 9x squared. Next, we move on to the second term of the first polynomial, the 3x. There isn't another x term in the second polynomial, so we'll just bring down that positive 3x and leave it as it is. There's nothing to combine it with. Now we move on to the 8, and we can see that there's a like term in the second polynomial. The 8 and 4 are both numbers. They're both constant terms. So we can add them together to get positive 12. So here's the sum of these two polynomials, 9x squared plus 3x plus 12. Now we're going to see how we can add the same two polynomials together, but using the vertical method. With the vertical method, we line the two polynomials up, one on top of the other, and we make sure that the like terms are together. So we have the 7x squared and 2x squared written together so that we can see that they need to be combined to give us the 9x squared. The 3x doesn't have a like term in the other polynomial, so it's just by itself. Now we combine the constant terms, the 8 and 4, to give us positive 12. Okay, here's our second example. Now we're still adding two polynomials together. Each polynomial is written in its own set of parentheses with addition in between, so we know we're adding them together. But now we have some subtraction and some negative terms in there, so we need to pay extra careful attention when we're dealing with these negatives. But our process is the same. We want to try to identify any like terms and combine them together. So let's start with the first polynomial. We have a 4x cubed there, but there's no like term in the second polynomial. So we'll just bring down that 4x cubed and leave it as it is. And if we look at the first term of the second polynomial there, the negative 3x squared, there's no like term with that to combine from the first polynomial. There's no x squared term. So we bring that down. Now notice the 3x squared has a negative in front of it. So when I bring it down, I can keep that negative with it and just treat it as a subtraction sign. Okay, next we have a minus x from the first polynomial, and we do have an x term in the second polynomial that we can combine it with. Now notice when I'm highlighting these terms, I'm including the plus or minus sign that's in front of it. That way I know whether or not that term needs to be treated as a positive or a negative. And both of these happen to be negatives. So when I combine a negative x and a negative 5x, I get negative 6x. Or I can just write it as minus 6x. Now we move on to the last term of the first polynomial, We have a minus 1 there, and I'm highlighting the minus sign with it so that I know that I need to treat it as a negative 1. And then in the second polynomial, I have a positive 6. When I combine negative 1 and positive 6, I get positive 5. Now we have the sum of these two polynomials. Let's see how we could have added the same two polynomials together but using the vertical method. Just like before with the vertical method, we have to line the polynomials one on top of the other and make sure that the like terms line up together. So since there was only a x cubed term in the first polynomial and there wasn't an x cubed term in the second polynomial, we just bring that down. And then we move on to the next column where we have the negative 3x squared. There was nothing to add that with, so we bring that down. Then we move to the next column. We have the negative x and negative 5x. Add those together, and that gives us negative 6x. And for our constant terms, we have negative 1 and positive 6 that add to give us positive 5. So with either method, the horizontal method or the vertical method, you get the same answer. It just depends on which method you prefer. So now it's your turn to practice. Find the sum of these polynomials, and if you need more time, you can pause the video. To find the sum of these polynomials, we needed to identify the like terms between each set of polynomials. So we have a negative 5x squared in one polynomial and an x squared in the second one. They'll combine together. The positive 3x from the first one and the minus 4x from the second one will combine together. And then we have the plus 2 at the end of the second polynomial there. There was no constant term in the first polynomial to combine that one with, so that one will stay the same. And the final result is negative 4x squared minus x plus 2. So now you just learned how to add polynomials. Great job!